I woke up this morning and as usual, I flip on the TV and I kind of listen to what's going on as far as events of the day or that have transpired over the previous 24 hours are concerned. And it struck me as kind of funny about all of the rallies and town hall meetings that are taking place today. And I kind of wondered why all of a sudden all of this stuff is going on. And to be honest with you, some of it has to do with Donald Trump, but in actuality, it's not all about Donald Trump. It appears to me that the people are upset regarding their representation. Now, you may wonder why I have this logo up here, and as you can see, it's the logo for the Democratic Party. I'm going to submit that instead of the mule up there, or the front portion of the mule up there, they need to turn that particular image around and put the ass part of the mule up there, because another word for a mule is an ass, but to be specific, the Democratic Party basically has allowed things to happen in such an asinine matter that I believe that donkey's ass is more representative of the Democratic Party, at least up to recent times. And I mean recent times, the last 30 to 60 days. Now, let me give you an example of exactly what I'm talking about. When the Democrats passed the Affordable Care Act, and that's exactly what it is, the Affordable Care Act, they needed the full 60 votes in the Senate in order to get it done, in order to avoid a filibuster. And at that time, they had 59 votes, 59 solid votes, and they had one not so solid vote. And that vote was the vote of Joe Lieberman out of Connecticut. Now, I can't be sure, but I'm pretty sure that Joe Lieberman, like a lot of the Democrats in the Eastern Corridor, take a lot of money from the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies. So, Mr. Lieberman, when he was approached about his vote for the upcoming legislation known as the Affordable Care Act, he was told that it was going to be drafted with a single payer option. Well, for some unexplained reason, Mr. Lieberman decided that if they placed that single payer option into the legislation, he would not give them his vote. Well, they knew that they had to have his vote in order to pass it, so they acquiesced to Mr. Lieberman. May whenever he goes rest in hell. And that is why you have the system that you have today. Well, you may not consider that to be stupid, because the greater good was the passage of the Affordable Care Act. And I think that they could have placed a lot of pressure on him to get him to go along with it, but they didn't play by the same rules that the Republican Party does. So we have what we have. But now here's the point that I want to make. When they passed the Affordable Care Act and began to put it into practice, to implement it. They allowed the Republican Party to create the marketing or public opinion playing field that battle would be fought on. Why do I say that? I say that because they began to call it Obamacare. Now, I don't know about you, but in my opinion, the Democrats allowing them to label it as Obamacare is what basically created a lot of the sentiment against it. There's a lot to be said about the phrase, it's all in the name. And nothing could be more closer to the truth than labeling the Affordable Care Act as Obamacare in order to generate, let us say, less than positive appreciation or sentiment towards it. Ask yourself a question. When you hear the name Obama, what comes to mind? A lot of people, the first thing they think of is black. Okay? Now, you may have the thought of black president, black man, black person, but black is the adjective that most commonly comes to mind when the name Obama is mentioned or thought of. So allowing the name of the Affordable Care Act to be interchangeable with Obamacare automatically created a negative. Now, you may say, oh, that's racist or whatever. No, that's actuality, okay? Now, initially, the Democrats, including President Obama, they initially pushed against it. But when President Obama, through his own hubris, I believe, allowed that name to be synonymous with the Affordable Care Act, he allowed the Republicans to create the playing field that the Democrats were going to have to defend. In my opinion, what they should have done was to say that they have heard a lot of talk about this thing called Obamacare, and we've looked throughout all the legislation that is on the books, and we cannot find the name Obamacare. What they should have said was, we think that they are talking about the Affordable Care Act, and if so, they need to say specifically what they're talking about, which is the Affordable Care Act. Obamacare does not exist, and we are not going to allow the mislabeling of this important piece of legislation that helps the people to be given any type of a negative connotation. Every time the Republicans brought up Obamacare, the Democrats should have said, I'm not going to discuss something that doesn't exist. Now, if they want to talk about something that actually does exist, and again, I think they might possibly be talking about the Affordable Care Act, I have no problem discussing the Affordable Care Act. But as far as discussing something that doesn't exist, I'm not going to waste my time discussing that. Now, that being said, the Democrats did a piss poor job of promoting the Affordable Care Act. in states like Kentucky, where they have their system, their individual, I call it a collective, but whatever, their exchange, that's what it's called. Their exchange is called Connect. Every time Connect was discussed by the Republicans in Kentucky, the Democrats should have came back and told the people that Connect is a direct result of the Affordable Care Act. And they should have touted that out until they were blue in the face. In other states where exchanges were created, they should have done the same thing. But the Democrats' failure to actually promote the benefits of the Affordable Care Act and trotted out, hundreds of people who gave their testimonies regarding how much the Affordable Care Act had done for them would, in my opinion, push the word Obamacare out of common usage. Now, it's true that premiums have gone up. And again, I fall back to putting two in Joe Lieberman's head and having another Democratic senator appointed from the state of Connecticut way back when, and too late now, but way back when, that would have gone along with them. But as far as the premiums are concerned, the premiums are based on the insurance companies making decisions on what the costs of the insurance policies were going to be. Now, the Republicans are consistently touting the fact that there are huge premium increases and people aren't getting good health care. Well, that's a lie, number one. Not the increases in the premiums, that is absolutely true. I've done research. Arizona, as a matter of fact, has some of the largest premium increases in the country having to do with the Affordable Care Act. But what they don't tell you is that as the premiums have gone up, the subsidies as well have gone up. And in most cases, the subsidies have gone up at a higher percentage than the premiums have actually risen. But you won't hear that from the Republican Party. But you're going to hear it from me, and I welcome you to go out there and do your own research. And it is very easily found, okay? Now, for some people, the premiums have gone up and the subsidies have not gone up quite as much. That is also true. But the net bottom line is that most people that have had their premiums increase have had at least that premium increase offset by the subsidy increase, if not given even more of a subsidy than the premium increase. But it's kind of late now, since the Republicans are in power in the White House, control of the Senate and the House of Representatives. And the people who are most benefited from this, a lot of them voted Republican, not realizing until now what they were voting, for, who they were voting for, and what was going to happen. So we now have a situation where you are having all of these rallies across the country. You're having these town hall meetings, and not a lot of them, and even the ones that have been scheduled were hastily scheduled, such as the one in South Carolina that Tim Scott is having today, where the constituents were basically given 24 hours notice, and the town hall meeting was not even held at Mr. Scott's town hall location, but he borrowed Representative Sanford's town hall location in order to have his meeting. Now, I don't know how well attended that particular meeting is, given the fact that only 24 hours notice was given, but it's going to be my assumption that there are going to be a lot of people there, and one of their main concerns is going to be that he is not representing the will of the people, because the last time I checked, the favorability of the Affordable Care Act has exceeded 50%. And if the Republicans who have touted repealing the Affordable Care Act have their way with a simple repeal, 20+ million people are going to be negatively impacted by this. Some because of the direct benefit of the insurance, some because of the expansion of Medicaid, some because of the fact that pre-existing conditions under the ACA were kicked to the curb, some because they could keep their kids on their insurance plans until they were 26, some because they no longer had to deal with lifetime caps. There were a tremendous amount of benefits from the Affordable Care Act. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some negatives too. The mandate that everybody has to have it, and young people feel like they're going to be living forever and never get sick. They obviously don't want to pay the taxes for it. And you can understand that, but guess what? They get used to it. Then you have the issue of older people who are using their insurance but paying the same price based on demographics and other factors as younger people. Yeah, that may or is somewhat of an issue as well. But all of those things could be fixed with the Affordable Care Act remaining in place. But it's because the Republicans were able to create a target as far as the Affordable Care Act is concerned, and be able to market the Affordable Care Act in such a negative way. People didn't do their own research. They took the words of their elected officials, and guess what? If there's one thing that I've learned over the last couple of years is Democrats lie, Republicans lie, everybody lies. It's just to what point are they willing to lie to in order to garner support. Now, I'll give it to the Republicans. They went to school early on this, and they did their homework, and they actually attended advanced classes on how to attack all things Democratic. The Democrats, on the other hand, in my opinion, played a lot of hooky, didn't do their homework, and never graduated. It looks like the Democratic Party is getting another opportunity to get a GED in the area of fighting for their beliefs and trying to come back into power using, of all things, public sentiment for the Affordable Care Act, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. They are now, in the past month, deciding to contribute money and resources into races for seats in the House of Representatives. And claimed that they were going to start fighting, they had not even attempted to put up a fight in at least 4 congressional districts that are ripe for the picking, i.e., flipping those districts from Republican to Democrat. But because they were exposed, now all of a sudden, they are starting to put resources in. And to be honest with you, they got a pretty good chance in all 4 of those districts that are going to have a vote within the next 30 days. If they put their money, and I do mean money, and time and effort where their mouths are, we may in fact have an opportunity to get something accomplished, not immediately, but by 2018. If you know anything about the moral movement, which is a movement in North Carolina in order to give the people back their power, to get rid of a lot of gerrymandering and get rid of the supermajority in their House of Representatives and State Senate. It took them 10 years to get to where they are, and they are absolutely obtaining victories. And I believe that there is going to be a sea change in the makeup of the North Carolina legislature so that it is a fairer representation of the people of North Carolina. That is an example of what can happen when you have your eye on the ball, you speak morally to people instead of appealing to their baser instincts or their party affiliations. The people need to take back their power, and they need to hold their elected representatives accountable. And if their representatives are not doing or representing them in the manner that they want, the people need to take action to remove those guys. Now, the Supreme Court had a lot to do with this, with their Citizens United bullshit and declaring that corporations are people. Well, if I got my AR-15, I cannot murder a corporation with that. But a person, if I shoot them, obviously I can. So, in my mind, that flies in the face of reality that a corporation is considered a person under the law. That needs to change, and we're not going to be able to change that probably for the foreseeable future, given the fact that Donald Trump is going to get his Supreme Court justice nomination passed, which will bring the court back to a 5-4 majority for the conservatives who allowed that debacle to be put into effect in the first place. We're going to have to hope that Justice Kennedy, Ginsburg, and I believe there's one other justice that are in the vicinity or in excess of 80 years old decides to sit it out and stay in the Supreme Court until 2020, where we'll have an opportunity to rectify the damage that is being done and going to be done over the next 2 years and potentially 4 years in order for the court to become more socially responsible rather than its right-leaning or conservatively focused viewpoints as far as laws are concerned. Democrats, you need to stay in school, and I'm talking about democratic representation. You need to stay in school, you need to stay after school, you need to do your homework, and you need to go after advanced degrees in dealing with Congress, legislation, and basically just learning how to fight in any way necessary in order to be victorious for the people.